So go ahead, you ask people the beverages, and you can talk about. And then I will welcome Sue McDowell, who is the Vice President of Research and Innovation, who's going to start us off.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I just want to say that this is an incredible opportunity to be here with you this evening. I serve as Vice President for Research and Innovation here at Miami. I've been here 2.5 years, and so I've been able to work with Scripps for 2.5 years, and it is one of the highlights of what I get to do. And I just want to welcome each one of you here this evening. So when I am working with Scripps, and then when I get to talk about Scripps, and I talk about Scripps quite a bit with a lot of different people, what I commonly, probably 95% of the time, I know a lot of you are quantitative researchers here, so I'd say it's about 95% of the time, I talk about Scripps being a group and a team and a center that have figured it out. And what do I mean as a VPRI talking about a center having figured it out? Well, I'll give you some more data. This past year, Miami brought in a record-breaking amount in external funding through grants and contracts. We hit 50 million this year. And Scripps was responsible for 6% of that total. So to put that in perspective, there's only one other unit that brought in a bit more than that, and that unit brought in the largest grant that Miami has ever brought in. But otherwise, funding here at Miami is spread across a lot of different units, having a lot of success. But to have this core group to be so successful in our record-breaking year was truly remarkable to me. So then, of course, you wouldn't know this actually. I'm a toxicologist, so I'm a scientist. So I actually do love data. So I'm like, it makes you wonder, are they a one-hit wonder? Yes, great year. What's a one-hit wonder? A one-hit wonder is bring in a great grant and that's it. Never heard from ever again. So how would I know if Scripps was a one-hit wonder? So I went through some historical data. Well, Dr. Tim Kuykendall went through some data for me. He's a great colleague of mine. And he went back to fiscal year 2017. And through those years, every year, Scripps has consistently, on average, brought in 9% of all of our external funding through those years. And what you may not know, and I could have brought graphs, Miami also has had this steady increase in external funding throughout those years. So in 2017, we were bringing in about 17 million. And this year we brought in 50 million. And yet consistently, on average, this one unit has brought in about 9%. The range has been 4 to 13% to give you those data as well. So I thought a bit about that. So nope, not a one-hit wonder. Very consistent. How? Like, I talk about Scripps having figured it out here. Why do I, as a VPRI, with the many different audiences I talk to, why do I start with that? Well, we know it's tough here. We know there are a number of challenges here. We know grant funding, especially federal dollars, incredibly challenging to go for. We know we're in the middle of cornfields, and we know we're pretty isolated here. We know there are challenges innate to every single member of the Miami community, and yet Scripps has figured it out. So I've been studying Scripps a lot because I want to replicate Scripps where appropriate. And so I looked at that track record. I can see, nope, it's not a one-hit wonder. It's not just in the last few years. Like, that's a consistent number across those years. So I dug a little deeper. How is it that funders continue to fund a unit like this? What do funders look for? They look for deliverables. They look for what you committed to, did you follow through on? And I mean, that makes sense in my personal life. If I hire someone to work on my house and they don't do the job, or they do the job and I kind of wish they hadn't done the job, um, I'm not hiring them again, right? I also think of funding agencies as kind of like venture capitalists. You know, they're going to invest looking for a return on that investment, not perhaps in dollars, but they had very specific deliverables they were looking for. And they are only going to fund you again if you deliver. And they have friends, and friends talk to friends, and they notice, is Scripps delivering or not? You don't have nearly 10 years of that kind of funding without having hit your deliverables, right? Those are the receipts. Those are the things that funding agencies are looking for. So how in the world does a single unit keep hitting like that? Well, I think we all know in large part it can go to leadership. And so we've had Dr. Suzanne Kunkel, who was at the helm throughout it, the majority of those years, who made sure to have that vision and action in place, and those systems of accountability and coaching and mentoring and all that goes into this crazy world of grant funding. Because I think the majority, well, students, if you don't know yet, you will learn grant funding is hard and rewarding. And once you have those grant dollars, we were just talking about indirect cost recovery. Once you have those grant dollars, you have some levers in your job. And it enables you to do really important work and to continue to do that important work. So we had that foundation. What you may or may not know. So I came here in April 1st of 2022. And one of the very first meetings that I had was with Dr. Suzanne Kunkel. And she had asked for the meeting. Now, Scripps reports through this office, so that made sense to me. What Suzanne brought to the meeting, I guess I didn't know Suzanne, so probably this was very characteristic of her. Some documentation. She had a plan. And part of what Dr. Kunkel shared with me that day was the plan for when she retired, for that succession planning for this center. Now, in my role, I had a very similar role at my previous institution, and now serving here about 2.5 years. I work with a lot of centers. And what I can tell you is that is so not characteristic. So what is much more characteristic, at least with the centers that I have worked with, is that as soon as that director retires, the center dies on the vine. You know, we're universities, so we don't tend to shut down things, but you just watch them die. Because there wasn't, in many, many, many instances, a strong succession plan put into place. But Dr. Kunkel did. She had that in place. She shared with me her vision. And through that vision, we were able to bring on strong leadership. And that was with the appointment of Dr. Katie Abbott. And, you know, Dr. Abbott could have just kept it going, right? Those are good numbers. You know, strong reputation, national reputation, statewide reputation, global reputation, could have been happy with that. But I don't think that that's part of Dr. Abbott's nature to just go with status quo. And so Dr. Abbott has a vision for this center. And it was my good fortune to sit in a meeting with Dr. Abbott and with President Crawford for an hour this past summer. And at that meeting, Dr. Abbott laid out this vision for the center. Now, at this point in my life, I have spent many, many hours in many, many meetings with our president. And I'll tell you a few things that I treasure. our president is a scientist. He is a researcher. He loves to ask questions. He loves to understand. And I have watched in many, many, many meetings, if the presenter did not have a clearly articulated plan or clearly articulated much of anything, the president will just start pummeling with questions. And it's not out of abuse, it's out of curiosity. He wants to know, is that a solid plan? And those questions often reveal, like, well, no, it wasn't. Or maybe something will emerge, but it's after that person was pummeled to get those answers. So Dr. Abbott wouldn't have known this, but as we met this summer, it was kind of this weird hour because I just kind of sat back and watched. As I recall, President Crawford asked 3 questions. And that was because Dr. Abbott put out there with such clarity a plan and a vision for this center. And it builds solidly off of the research and the service that this center has been known for. As I recall it, the majority of questions actually came from Dr. Abbott, which I kind of enjoyed watching too. And why I say that to you too is those questions, many of them were making sure that the vision that Dr. Abbott had for this center aligned to the president's vision, making sure that the steering wasn't going off from where she was going to have backing. Clearly, by the end of that meeting and in the week that followed, there was institutional commitment for that vision. So Dr. Crawford and Dr. Liz Molinex, our provost, committed $2.2 million to the center to continue to build out the research capabilities of the center so that we can continue to see the good work that you are doing, that you're doing with your research, that you're doing with your service, that you're doing with the programming that you do. So with that kind of leadership, I just see so very much hope for this center. As a person that is starting to try to get accustomed to growing into an aging body, I also see a lot of hope for the research that is informing the care that we're providing for those of us who are moving into that older population, for our friends and our families. It's all based on this foundation under this very strong leadership that Dr. Kunkel brought to this. And now look at where we're going with Dr. Abbott. So I appreciate this opportunity. I want you to know how very well, I think you know this, but how very well respected you are on this campus in the work that you're doing. And then, of course, you know, some of the other receipts that you see are the publications that flow through this unit. And that, again, wouldn't happen if you didn't have the reputation and if you weren't hitting your deliverables. So with all of that, so much hope for our future, but also thank you for what you're doing day to day right now. Thank you. All right, let me get the microphone. Okay. La la la. Okay, got it.
Hi, everybody. Wow. Thank you so much, Sue. What a delight. And it has been my pleasure to take on this role and have you as a mentor and as a boss. I love it. So welcome everybody in person. Welcome to all of our audience that's live streaming. We looked, and get this, we have faculty, staff, and alumni from class year 1958 all the way through 2024 joining us tonight. Isn't that cool? Along with all of our credentials. Isn't that cool? That is we're just delighted. We're trying this live stream for the first time this year, and we're really excited to do that. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to just share a little bit about the Scripps Gerontology Center history, but I mostly want to introduce our featured guest speaker. And so many of you might know that the name Scripps sort of seems familiar, and that's because back in what we know about is that Edward Willis Scripps, otherwise known as E.W. Scripps, was an American media magnate and founder of the E.W. Scripps Company. And he revolutionized American journalism in the late 19th and 20th centuries by creating one of the largest newspaper chains in the United States. He borrowed $10,000 to start his first newspaper, the Penny Press in Cleveland, later known as the Cleveland Press. And his mission was to give voice to the working class. The company motto was, quote, "Give light and the people will find their own way," end quote. This is one of his most famous quotes, emphasizing the idea that informed citizens can make their own decisions if given access to accurate and unbiased information. Scripps was deeply interested in science and education, believing that scientific discovery and dissemination of knowledge were essential for societal progress. Scripps retired from the newspaper business at age 54 and spent his later years sailing around the world, reading and ruminating aboard his yacht called the Ohio. Cruising towards China in 1918, Scripps pored over the pages of a doctoral dissertation by Warren Thompson. The book elaborated upon theories of the population multiplying much faster than the world's ability to provide subsistence for it. Scripps saw that admonition playing out in the overpopulation and hunger I witnessed while touring the Chinese countryside. A philanthropist, humanist, and self-described sociologist, concerned by the lack of any systematic scientific study of worldwide population problems, he decided to take action. Scripps recognized early on that the aging population would pose unique opportunities and challenges to society, particularly in the areas such as healthcare, social services, and public policy. This foresight led to the 1922 endowment of the Scripps Foundation for Research in Population Problems at Miami University, with Warren Thompson as the first director. And shortly after that, Thompson hired another researcher, P.K. Welpton, and together they developed a social science approach to predict fertility for population projections that is still in use around the world today. And so over the last 100 years, additional individuals have continued the impressive legacy of Warren Thompson and P.K. Welpton. In 1961, then Director Doc Cottrell served on the planning committee for the first White House Conference on Aging. And we developed the first gerontology course at Miami in 1967. In 1972, the name was changed to the Scripps Gerontology Center. And in 1977, our first Masters of Gerontological Studies was launched. And in 2005, we launched a PhD in social gerontology. And again, as Sue mentioned, in 2011, under Dr. Suzanne Kunkel's leadership, the Ohio Board of Regents designated Scripps as an Ohio Center of Excellence in recognition of the ability to demonstrate Ohio's outstanding capacity to strengthen the regional, national, and international economy with broad-minded scholars and creative dynamic thinking. So presently, we're a team of 22 researchers and scholars dedicated to the advancement of gerontological scholarship. Our mission is to do work that makes a positive difference in the lives of aging individuals, their families, and communities, and to meet the needs of aging societies. And so, one of EW's notable quotes is, quote, "The only serious question in life is, will it work?" End quote. And this quote encapsulates Scripps's practical, results-oriented approach to both business and life, emphasizing pragmatism over theory and idealism, which is the perfect segue for me to introduce our 2024 Leaders in Aging Research Awardee, Dr. Kathleen Unroe. Dr. Unroe is a research scientist with the Indiana University Center for Aging Research at the Regenstrief Institute. She's a professor of medicine at Indiana University School of Medicine and a practicing geriatrician in a nursing home in Indianapolis. Dr. Unroe's research, clinical, and policy interests are focused on improving the quality of care, particularly access to palliative and end-of-life care for nursing home residents. She has received over $8 million from the National Institute of Aging for pragmatic clinical trials to improve advanced care planning in nursing homes. In addition, she is the PI of a $30 million Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services demonstration project aimed at improving quality of care and reducing unnecessary hospitalizations in 40 Indiana nursing homes. And most recently, she received a $15.5 million grant from the National Institutes of Aging to establish a national network structure to include more nursing home residents in clinical trials. Even though clinical trials are critical to the development and testing of treatments, the over 1.4 million individuals living in nursing homes are rarely included in clinical trials. And this new 5-year award will fund work to establish a more inclusive approach to advancing medical science and improving health. And if you've been calculating, we're well over $50 million in awards just in the last 10 years. She is an associate editor of the Journal of the American Geriatric Society. She was a 2009-2010 Health and Aging Policy Fellow and had a placement at the Health and Human Services ASPE Office of Disability, Aging, and Long-Term Care Policy. Dr. Unroe completed a 3-year geriatric medicine fellowship and internal medicine residency at Duke University. She received her MD with a specialization in aging and master's in health administration from Ohio State and a BA, get this, in Latin language and literature from Miami University. So, finally, Dr. Unroe is an entrepreneur. She is a founder and chief medical officer of Probari, a business designed to disseminate the successful optimistic clinical care model, showcasing her commitment to translating research into practice. And again, did you catch the fact that this incredibly accomplished individual is a Miami grad in the humanities? Okay. I mean, you know, we're just saying. So I came to know Kathleen because it was my great fortune to be paired with her as a mentor on my embedded pragmatic clinical trial over the past year and a half through the National Institutes of Aging Impact Collaboratory. And when things went south, it was her wisdom and counsel that kept me from despair. You know, when things were going wrong, as they do, it's a pilot. That's why you're there, to learn. And her vast expertise allowed us to persevere, reaching our recruitment goals. And so I hope I've been able to convey a small portion of why we selected Dr. Unroe for this award. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Unroe to the podium and a hearty congratulations.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Katie. A little overwhelming, really, to be here, and I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here. It's exciting to be back on this campus, and for such an exciting reason. It's been a fun day. I certainly, you know, everything you said about Scripps resonates from the day I've gotten to spend in the company of the students and scholars here, but also because I was here, and Scripps was an important home base for me when I was at Miami. So the title of this talk, Transforming Long-Term Care, Impact Through Policy, Research, Clinical Care, and Entrepreneurship, I feel like it's sort of, I was looking at it as I've been working on these slides, I feel like it's kind of my life mission. I want to improve care for people with long-term care needs, particularly people living in nursing home settings, through any means necessary, any way where I can be most useful. Right now, I'm doing all those things. And at different points in time, I've done a little bit more of different, you know, aspects of that. But that's my goal, is to be as useful as I can be to achieve that goal. And so got a lot I'm excited to touch on tonight. And also, I'm hoping people will ask questions and I can go into more detail on anything that is of interest to you. I actually took out the word challenges. It's later in the slides because you can't really get away from it, and put realities of providing nursing home care. I'm going to talk about that
landscape a bit to set the stage. But there are so many opportunities for us to improve care in this setting, and I'm very hopeful, and which is why I name my projects things like optimistic and uplift, right? So those are a couple of my projects that I was going to talk about with a little bit more detail. I'll talk a little bit about opportunities with entrepreneurship, because I think it is an opportunity to deepen our impact, maybe, or it can be a distractor. So I think that I'll touch on that. And again, if people want to talk more about navigating that with an academic career, I'd certainly be very happy to. And then strategic partnerships, because that's what it all comes down to. There's no big project or big idea that doesn't take a ton of people to execute. And so all of this work is done in collaboration with large teams, which makes it fun. So this is my disclosure / bit of a preview. So about Probari. So Probari is a Latin word that means proven. So there you go. I apply my Bachelor of Arts in Latin language and literature. We paid marketing consultants trying to figure out the name for our company, and they were coming up with nothing. And so I took my Latin dictionary off the shelf behind me in my office, and I flipped through looking for words that I felt represented what we were. And what we are is bringing evidence-based practices to the bedside. So Probari, meaning proven. And so, yes, this is my disclosure that I have this company, but also I look forward to talking about it later as well. Okay, so now you have to indulge me on a trip down memory lane. I had a lot of fun going through pictures with my kids. So this is me day one in front of Dorsey Hall, my freshman dorm. And then that's not there anymore. Katie, that's what we were walking by. And so with my dad walking around campus with my awesome 1996 outfit, the scrunchie on my wrist, it looks like. Okay, and then I couldn't believe I found this, my student ID. But look, I had to black this out. You know why? That was my social security number. Did we not have identity theft in the 90s? I couldn't believe that when I found this ID, that my social security number was just on there. So anyway, but yes, there's my student ID. And then, yeah, graduation with my brother and sister. So it was just a tremendous place. And I don't think I was impressed enough by what a beautiful campus it was when I was here, you know, as it feels like a child, like, a long time ago when I was an undergrad. And I just, I can just appreciate it so much coming here. And again, I was a pre-med, but I had to take I was in all the pre-med classes, but then I had this awesome humanities home base with the classics department, with smaller groups and these upper level Latin translation classes. And then I loved gerontology because that helped me see the vision and my future. Because it wasn't probably day one, but at some point in Gerontology 101 or that intro gerontology class, Dr. Kathy McGrew asked, who here in the room is pre-med, thinking about med school? So I raised my hand, and she said, is anyone thinking about geriatrics? And I shot my hand into the air. I knew that that's what I was going to do. And at times, pre-med got a little tough and rough, right, along the way. But I had that longer term vision of being a geriatrician, and I had such an affirming place to be in my gerontology classes here on campus. So, but why geriatrics? Why did I know? I knew. I was very confident that this is what I was going to do. Well, I've always been drawn to working with older people and had very strong relationships with my grandparents. This is my grandpa I in his 90s with some of my girls. And then in addition to having good relationships with my grandparents and being drawn to it, but I also started volunteering in nursing homes when I was a kid and spending time with people in that setting and developing relationships with them. So there are more than 15,000 nursing homes in the United States. And nursing homes are tricky because we're trying to do kind of two things there, both rehabilitation care, post-acute care after a hospitalization for people who want to get stronger, need rehab, physical therapy services, etc., and go home. But also we're doing long-term care in facilities for people who have need support for basic activities of daily living. So average about 100 beds, smaller average number of facilities in Indiana. In Indiana, we have about 530 nursing homes. Nearly all are Medicare and Medicaid certified. So when you hear Medicare, you're thinking about the rehab and the short stay. When you hear Medicaid, you're thinking about the payer for the long stay. Most are for profit, which is a theme in healthcare. I mean, most hospices are for profit now, hospitals, etc. So institutional care in nursing homes is incredibly expensive. There are experts here in this audience who know this data in more depth than I do, but because of the high cost of institutional nursing home care, it is a path to Medicaid eligibility. And because it is very difficult for anyone, any family, to pay that out of pocket. Thus, Medicaid really is the dominant payer for nursing home bed days. The nursing home residents themselves, you don't get in the nursing home, especially for long-term care, without having a combination of serious and complex medical illnesses, functional impairment, again, need for support for basic activities of daily living, and or cognitive impairment. Some overlap of those is why you are in a nursing facility needing care. This is Ruby. She was 97 when we took that picture. And so that, you know, that's our population. That's who is there in nursing homes. So the 50 to 70%, that's for long stay nursing home residents. The overall population, the rehab, have lower degrees of cognitive impairment. But certainly whenever we're talking about the nursing home setting, we are talking and thinking about cognitive impairment and dementias. So I loved volunteering in a nursing home. I got to help with activities. I got to have long conversations with people. I got to continue. That's actually where I developed my theory, which continues to be true over the years, that you don't get to be 80 without being incredibly interesting, and just with your own life experiences, whatever they are. It's just, I really enjoyed it. However, I also saw things that made me sad. I saw people who were lonely. I saw people who were in pain. I saw a lot of the suffering and isolation as well. And indeed, nursing homes are plagued with inconsistent quality. So many nursing homes can provide excellent care today, but to do it every day, shift to shift, weekends, nights, and you know, it's very challenging. And some key areas, you know, poor pain control and symptom management. And then also an issue that is frequently talked about, and I like talking about it, is frequent and burdensome transitions to the hospital. And the reason I like to talk about it is because if you want to tackle it, you got to deal with all of it. There's no easy to fix to that one. So you really have to think about all the issues and quality of care and communication and systems and financing if you're trying to address that issue. There's been several research studies, and this is an Office of Inspector General report, but that document high rates of adverse events that occur in the nursing home setting. And again, problems in the systems of care that contribute to those. Oh gosh, I went 2 slides. But I know what they all say. So thank you for going back. But it's highlighting some of the areas of these B challenges. I was going to have to say that word. And like I said, there are so many issues, big issues. If you want to tackle them in nursing homes, you got to hit all of these things. So we struggle to talk to each other within a nursing home, having the physician and the nursing assistant and social services, even having us have conversations can be challenging, but trying to communicate with the hospital continues to be challenging, and really in an unacceptable way, given where we think we've all come in terms of, you know, information exchange, IT, etc. It's very challenging to consistently communicate well with families, and families struggle with this as well. They don't want to, you know, disrupt care. They don't want to bother people, but then, you know, so it can be a fraught area as well. Data systems. So nursing homes, you talk to people in healthcare who don't work in nursing homes, and they think we don't have electronic health records or anything. We do. We've got them. We've caught up a lot in that way, but they don't, again, talk to hospitals. EHRs and, you know, all of that. Okay, so support from hospitals. So hospitals are very interested in care provided in nursing homes to a degree because they don't want people to bounce back to them So hospitals have a number of different kinds of relationships with nursing homes, but if they don't have an ownership relationship with them, which largely they don't, what they care about is these 3 people that they sent from their hospital to that facility and how those 3 people do. They don't tend to have a motivation or willingness to do investment overall in improving care in the nursing home. And so hospitals will reach out, have these networks of nursing homes, and they'll demand things from them. But giving actual support is more limited in my experience. From what I've seen, palliative care access, advanced care planning, this is a particular area of interest of mine because as I see challenges, I decided pretty early on that I really wanted to lean into understanding if palliative care services in facilities could be an answer to some of those challenges on the long-term care side. But what I have certainly seen is how spotty current access is, how inconsistent it is. And then staffing shortages. You can't talk about nursing homes for more than a couple minutes without talking about issues around consistent staff, training of staff, and turnover of staff. Lots of studies have documented this, but it's very important to think about when you're thinking about how do we fix things? How do we improve care? What kind of interventions do we want to put into nursing homes? We have to think about this reality. And also, I knew this, like going into my bigger project, Optimistic, I knew about the turnover of nursing staff. The other couple bars or the graph I didn't put on here is the turnover in administrative staff. So turnover in executive directors and directors of nursing. And that can be the most challenging thing when you're implementing an intervention. Okay, so Optimistic. So of course it's an acronym, but it's chosen completely for that word and to set a tone for what we felt like we were going to be able to accomplish with these resources. Optimizing patient transfers, impacting medical quality, improving symptoms, transforming institutional care. So Optimistic, which Dr. Abbott already mentioned, was this tremendous opportunity to attack this issue of avoidable hospital transfers of long-stay nursing home residents. And it was funded out of the Innovation Center in CMS, which had been fairly newly created at that time. It was part of the Affordable Care Act. And the goal of CMMI, as designed in the ACA, is to test and fund and test new models of both clinical delivery models and financial models, with a goal of then scaling them up if successful. So in Indiana, we got to work with 40 facilities in this project. It was really exciting and a ton of work to recruit these facilities, but you know what? We retained them. We kept them through this project because we were pouring resources into them. It was an amazing, amazing opportunity to have this kind of a project. Because that $30 million was largely going to staff. So we got to, in phase 1, 2012 to 2016, which seems a while ago now, we got to embed nurses into each of 19 partner facilities, and we got to deploy them in a novel role to try to address the many drivers of avoidable hospital transfers. We were one of 7 project sites in the country. And then so some of the reason that people transfer to the hospital is thought to be, one of the drivers is thought to be the financing. Okay, so if Medicare pays more than Medicaid for a day in a nursing home, and again, Medicare only pays for days right after a hospitalization. So if you have a 96-year-old who has pneumonia, has dementia, is living in a nursing home, and Medicaid is paying for each day, and that person gets sick, and it's a lot of work to take care of someone who's acutely ill in the nursing home. We can do it, but this person's going to need a lot more monitoring. She needs to be hand-fed in her room. I mean, it's going to take a lot more nursing care and help to do that. Or if this person goes to the hospital, has a 3-day qualifying stay, comes back, Medicare will pay for those bed days. Now, it's more complicated than that, but I will tell you that in a given nursing home that's 100 beds, maybe 20 are Medicare rehab, and then the rest are long stay. An administrator can tell you today how many people in that building are on Medicare. They know because they need to know because it's so relevant to the business model of care in a nursing home setting. So what phase 2 was about, the payment demo, is let's try to lessen that financial incentive by providing money to facilities for the enhanced care that a sick person needs in a facility. So they would pay facilities for episodes of care for common conditions such as pneumonia, heart failure, exacerbation. So common chronic disease exacerbations or infections, they would pay them for a week to keep them in the facility and take care of them. And I think they could have started with that, but there was so much concern that people who were sick would not get transferred when they needed to, that they actually needed to do phase 1 first, and then before they could have essentially the political courage to do phase 2 and add money to the equation. So phase 2, we got to keep our clinical model in all those facilities, and they got to be paid for those episodes of care. And then we had additional buildings that just got the money. It was a great opportunity. We learned a ton, and we, again, developed out these roles where we were trying to address the many drivers of avoidable hospital transfers. We had nurse practitioners as well. And we developed tons of tools and trainings and protocols and manuals, all kinds of job aids that we felt would be relevant and helpful to for both our nurses to deploy and support care in facilities, but also to support facilities in delivering best practice care. And then the most exciting part was getting positive results. So this was an external evaluation that was done of phase 1 of the project that was published in Health Affairs. And this is optimistic. Potentially avoidable hospitalizations reduced by about a third compared to control group facilities in our state. So optimistic. We got to, it was a big project, 8 years. We were publishing papers, we were presenting at meetings, building relationships and learning a ton. And one highlight was the Journal of the American Geriatric Society cited our description of our paper as one of the most impactful recent articles. And that was an exciting day. I'm gonna grab my water. But as exciting as this project was, and as much as I got out of it every single day, and I personally learned, as well as everyone on this team, there was very much this "and then what" feeling about it. And then what was supposed to be that CMMI was going to scale this up, right? But of course, the mechanisms to do that are complex, slow, and you don't. And I had obviously zero ability to do that myself. So what could I do? What could we do? Our team do? And so one choice, or what we did, and this is Russ Evans, who was one of the first nurses hired in the Optimistic demo, and I have been working with for since 2012 very closely. He and I co-founded Probari to create a vehicle, to create an engine where we could continue to innovate and take our tools and materials licensed from Indiana University now to Probari and continue to try and iterate this model in the real world. I don't think I definitely did. I thought I had my eyes wide open about how much work it takes to take something developed in academia to the marketplace, but I certainly underappreciated the amount of iteration and evolution we would have to go through. Again, I can share more if people are curious about what Probari does and how we are. I think I shared a bit earlier, whenever I talk about Probari, depending on when you catch me, it's a different story, right? Like, this is the life of a small business right now. It's kind of a stressful story, but like it's been a whole other part of my brain and incredible challenge these last years, and I'm very, very grateful for it. I'm going to take a bit of a step, though, to talk about COVID-19. This is the one picture I took during all of that, I think, in the nursing home, because COVID-19, everyone remembers this. When you talk about the impact and the mortality related to COVID-19, you think of nursing homes. We remember these headlines. And this was as of February 2022. So, which covers more than 149,000 nursing home residents and more than 2,200 staff members had died of COVID-19. And I was working in my nursing home, during this whole time. And even, even though the mortality rate was high in nursing homes, most people who got COVID absolutely did survive, but they suffered. And that's the part that people didn't see, is what that felt like in the nursing home setting. So there was the suffering related to the infection itself, with shortness of breath and delirium. And then there was this, anytime that anyone in a nursing home gets sick with all their clinical complexity, they can have a new baseline, decreased, more functional impairment. So we definitely saw that. But then there was the suffering related to our rules and regulations and everything we were trying to do related to infection control. And I think that you guys, I think folks in this room have done a lot of work in this area and are very sensitive to all of this, but it was huge learning for everyone, and it was heartbreaking to see. Not only were people cut off from family and friends, but they were also isolated within the facility. They weren't going out to activities, congregate meals. They were trapped in their rooms and felt that way. And there's a number of reasons why this pandemic was so devastating in our setting, and a lot of it is kind of how we built these buildings. In my facility, it's an old facility. We have shared rooms, and that's common. But then 2 rooms share a bathroom, so we have 4 people in a bathroom, and that created lots of challenges. I don't need to go into these in depth, but the last bullet is important. You cannot get away from the personal nature of care in nursing homes, the hands-on nature of care in nursing homes, and that in and of itself causes risks, and of course staffing. Actually, I'm going to keep us moving. So we saw lots of headlines during this time about nursing homes, and I often get frustrated about the negative press that nursing homes always seem to consistently get. But I agreed with this headline in many ways. I mean, there were so many issues in nursing homes that any of us who worked or had been studying these settings of care were very well aware of. And day to day, we held them together with tape and glue. And all of that, we couldn't do that anymore during the pandemic, because of this immense stressor of COVID-19. So, sorry, I'm so worried. I don't want it to go too far. Okay, so during the pandemic, because of having Probari, we were really well positioned to engage and be supportive. So, we were really well positioned because, I already knew people at the state, right? I'd been working with them for years on Optimistic, so could call people really quickly. But then I had something to offer. I could say, I have this team of fabulous nurses who know nursing homes inside and out. Could we be useful to you? And the answer was heck yes. And so our Probari team was able to do a ton of work with state government all during the pandemic. It was an amazing opportunity when we all just wanted to be doing as much as we could to support people working in nursing homes, people living in nursing homes, and we did all kinds of stuff. We helped support statewide testing efforts. We helped support statewide vaccination. And then we got to train the National Guard. They deployed the National Guard into every nursing home in Indiana. And when I heard the governor announce this at a press conference, I contacted them and I said, could you use our help with this? We'd love to help with this. And they said, heck yes. And so we, within a week with our partners, created a 4-hour crash course on an orientation of what this deployment was going to look like, orienting them to the nursing home setting, orienting them to dementia, and also infection control. And we had worked out with Guard leadership what they could do and not do and create that job description. And then we helped manage that deployment for as long as they kept it going. We also were able to publish during this time, and 2 of the authors on this paper are physicians who were working at State Department of Health and our Health and Human Services in Indiana, which was which was a great opportunity. So even while we were doing this policy-focused work, it was a great opportunity to also share lessons learned, because I mean, I was, I think, on the phone with everyone I knew all over the country we were trying to figure out how our different states were approaching this, and what policy should be that could be supportive and safe for this population. So, and also, one of the best parts, to go back to those years of optimistic, was the stakeholder advisory board that we built for that project. We met quarterly in the evening, every quarter for 8 years. So we had Medicaid, we had Department of Health, we had health system leaders, we had the ombudsman, we had Alzheimer's Association. Of course, we had the nursing home providers and clinical provider groups there as well. Well, all of those relationships that we had created in the context of this project then pivoted to our go-tos for trying to support the state in developing regulatory policy, getting quick reactions, testing things out. Like these networks and relationships were everything in terms of us being effective and helpful during that time. So, and then I want to talk about palliative care in nursing homes and cover this one last grant, and then I'll kind of wrap it up here, because I am eager to go into more depth into anything this audience is interested in. So back to what I said earlier, that when I look at the challenges in the nursing home setting, the realities of the nursing home setting, as I learned about palliative care when I was in my geriatric fellowship training, I began to wonder if this could be part of the answer to improving the quality of care delivered in nursing home setting. So palliative care is specialized medical care for people who are living with a serious illness. So people are very familiar with hospice, and sometimes are confused about hospice versus palliative care. Hospice is palliative care at the end of life. It's largely defined by the Medicare hospice benefit, which is the last 6 months of life. But palliative care is much more broader in terms of time frame. The goal is to provide relief from symptoms and stress of illness, focusing on quality of life for the patient or resident and their family. And as I again understood the philosophy, the goals of palliative care, the tools of palliative care, and I also thought about working with families with people who have advanced dementia in the nursing home, it seemed to overlap so much. And the few studies that there have been of palliative care in the nursing home setting have been promising, with better pain management, lower rehospitalization rates, family satisfaction, and then goal concordance. So what does a palliative care program in a nursing home look like? Well, it depends who you ask. It really depends who you ask. And this is another one of my residents. He was 102 when this picture was taken. But in terms of a palliative care program, great variability, no standardized definitions, and not great quality metrics related to palliative care. And that's a problem, because you can talk to administrators of nursing home, doctors who work in nursing homes, and they're like, yeah, palliative care nursing homes, that makes a lot of sense. But if we can't put our arms around it and describe it, it just, it's very problematic. So my colleague, John Cagle at University of Maryland, who's PhD in social work, and I are the co-PIs now of this phase 3 clinical trial called Uplift. And so we talked and we were like, all right, we're just going to decide. Here is a gold standard way to deliver palliative care. This is a way to do palliative care program in nursing homes, relying on the evidence that does exist. And let's test it in a clinical trial and see if it works. And so it's happening. It's all happening right now. So we trained in-house palliative care champions to screen residents for palliative care needs. And then we also, in addition to this building up capacity in-house, we also brought in specialty palliative care consultants to provide additional support and facilities. So again, with nursing homes, I'm always when I'm thinking about improving quality of care in nursing homes, I'm always thinking about what should we help them to be able to do? themselves, right? What is part and parcel of providing care in a nursing home? What are basic competencies that we want to be delivered in every nursing home in the United States? What should we expect? And also, what's too much to expect with the current resources available? What do we need to bring in? What additional supports are needed, with a recognition that this is not a short-term thing? This makes me crazy over and over with funders who want to go in and provide an intervention, leave, and expect it's fixed now. Like, this was going to require sustained support and resources over time. But we need to build an evidence if indeed this is the right resources to bring to bear. So this is Uplift. It's a stepped wedge trial. We enrolled 16 nursing facilities, 8 in Indiana, 8 in Maryland. We have actually completed implementation in Indiana. Some of the Maryland facilities are lagging, and we'll finish implementation rate at the beginning of 2025. I actually kind of wanted a break from using hospital transfers as the metric, the outcome. But the thing about it is so darn easy to measure. This is so much more work doing all this primary data collection. But there's a lot that goes into picking your outcome measure and thinking through, how you have to be resourced to do it, et cetera. But we're doing a lot of primary data collection in this study and just starting to publish some of our early findings from it. But yeah, we're excited about it. We've enrolled over 600 nursing home residents in it. Okay, so Uplift is an example of a clinical trial in nursing homes. And I really did not struggle to recruit nursing facilities. And there are lots of other things that have been challenges. But the recruiting the nursing facilities, kind of getting that off the ground, I found lots of good partners, again, because they know me, they know us. Like, we've been working together for years in Indiana. But you mentioned it a little bit, Katie, about how there are a lot of challenges to doing clinical research in the nursing home setting. And so because of those, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I appreciate it. So because of that, the NIA decided to make a substantial investment in improving the infrastructure for doing clinical trials in the nursing home setting. And so they put out this request for proposals that was specifically for this, to establish a national consortium of transdisciplinary aging researchers to develop infrastructure to increase the quality and quantity of randomized clinical trials in the nursing home setting, address critical knowledge gaps, generate high quality evidence, and to create a centralized research infrastructure. A lot of these, kind of clinical trials coordinating center infrastructure type of grants also require you to develop a big data center and database. There is already an effort led by Vince Moore at Brown and Dave Gifford at AHCA that has created this long-term care data cooperative, the LTCDC. And the long-term care data cooperative is combining medical records from on several thousand nursing home residents. It's now matched with claims data as well. And that is a partner sister organization now to our now funded Next Steps project. But in the process of putting together this grant, this large team that put in this grant, we spent a lot of time, like an entire day of my life was drafting this PowerPoint slide. But then it went through a lot of iterations and feedback from colleagues around the country, because how do we end up with this goal of a high quality nursing home clinical trial? Like, what are all the things that need to go into it? And one of the first things is, does this really need to be tested in the nursing home setting? There are, say, maybe medication treatments, or medications that could be tested in a geriatric population in an outpatient setting, and it really isn't necessary to understand, the evidence base. You don't need to develop that evidence base in the nursing home. But there are other treatments, and a great example are some of the therapeutics that were developed during the pandemic that were not tested in the nursing home, not at all. And then the second they're approved, there's this expectation that instantly every nursing home resident should be receiving it. But without testing it in the nursing home setting, we all got really behind because we didn't figure out how to implement in that setting. We didn't develop the manuals, the protocols for, we're going to need the nursing staff to do this and monitor for this. Like we're going to, none of that had been figured out. We're all trying to figure it out after these products are on the market and individually at different centers. It was incredibly frustrating, and it could have been prevented if we had tested it in the setting in which it was going to be delivered. And so we've really tried to think through, of course, if anyone looks at this and sees anything missing, please tell me, because we'll keep iterating it over time. But we've really tried to think through to guide us in this work about all the elements that we feel are going to be necessary to conducting work in this setting. This, I should have put the reference on here. This was actually recently published in JAGS as a commentary, and it was really fun to get it like in print and see it because we had developed it for the grant. But I think we're gonna use it a ton over these next years. This grant, Next Steps, was just funded September 1st. So we're just still in these early days of getting it up and running, but it involves a dozen institutions, and it's going to be so much fun. So yes, and so this is what we said. So we have a logo, we don't have a website, but that's coming. But this is the argument we made as we wrote this grant, which I have walked through, about how how we have to address this. It's imperative we address this, and the resources and collaborations it's going to take to do it. Okay, so just try and tie a few things together here, but it is possible to improve care in nursing homes, and to improve, even more than improve care in nursing homes, to improve our long-term care system. I firmly believe that we've got the talent, the tools. We certainly have the money, and that's part of the good news story here, is we spend so much money on this system that we're not happy with. And so as we innovate, as we figure out new ways to do it, I don't want to give it back. I just want to redirect it to provide the care that we all want to receive and want to give. So to address implementation challenges, though, we need roadmaps. And that's the work you do as part of designing an intervention, designing a protocol, and that's, for Uplift, for our palliative care trial. This is a big part of the deliverable, is we want to really develop now, and we're doing this work now, developing and packaging educational modules, all those trainings we delivered in the nursing home, to put them into educational modules and manuals and protocols about how do you screen people for palliative care needs in the nursing home. How do you integrate that into your workflow? These are things we learn through doing a high quality clinical trial, but then we need to package them, disseminate them, to connect it to clinical practice. Outcome measures is our, primary data collection is so burdensome, but at least that's been my experience in this trial, so I keep talking about it. But there are opportunities to be as clever as possible to leverage existing data or to work it into workflow. And Katie, I think you've been so thoughtful about that in your work, and especially as you rely on certified nursing assistants to deliver a lot of this, and a deep understanding and appreciation of their workflows, and how can we, learn about the impact. We can make it harder for us on the research side, because we just want them to deliver the intervention, and how can we capture this kind of data? And then this is where Scripps excels, is, there are new policies, and there are changes in the industry and changes in payment, but how do we know, how they're impacting care? How can we inform policymakers to tweak or change them, or, and that's where I have always admired the work of this center, as such a model, and the relationship with state government, and trying to understand that and inform and support, because policymakers are going to make decisions. They have to. That's their job. That was eye-opening for me during the policy fellowship. We tend in academia, when we communicate to anyone, is to kind of lead with the limitations, lead with the, the ways where the research, the caveats, it's not completely generalizable because of X, Y, Z, but really we often have key lessons learned, ways that we can inform their thinking, because they're going to make a decision based on the best evidence they have. And maybe that's what you've got in your pocket, and you need to present it in that way. So I shot my hand in the air because I knew that I was going to be, a geriatrician. And every step along the way, I had people who supported and affirmed that. So I knew that's what I was going to do, but there's no way I could have made it through if I hadn't had all of that backup and support over the years. And this is just some of the people who have been there cheering me on and supporting me in such instrumental and important ways. So it's with great gratitude to all those folks. And I want to say that to all of you guys who are interested and focused and studying gerontology, keep going, lean into it. There's so much opportunity. There's no area of our field that, we've figured out, frankly, or that's saturated, or, there's room. There's room to develop and grow so many different career tracks within gerontology. And so it's exciting to be in an environment with so many people who know that this is the coolest thing in the world. So I love that. But anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
What time is it?
I think, what time is it? A little after 6. We're good. We're good. All right, awesome. So thank you so much, Kathleen. That was fantastic. So we have a few minutes for questions. As you're thinking of your questions, I wanted to thank a few people who put this on for us. So if you had a part to play in putting this reception and talk together, please stand up. Yep, there we go. Thank you. That's right. We want to thank Sean Vaness, Leah Jansen, JJ Slager, who is helping us on the live stream part. Also, we did have a couple of folks retired. Maureen Cunningham helped, who's retired since then. And so, but again, it takes many people to put this on. Tanya Barger helped out a lot. You didn't stand up. And also just a plug for the students in the room. If you're interested in learning more about implementation science, I'm teaching it next semester. Look up GTY 610 if you're interested in learning more. So what we'd like to do now is open it up for some questions. We have a few questions that people submitted online, but let's start with somebody in the audience and then I'll switch to one online. So is there anybody in the audience who'd like to ask a question? And then we just, I can come around with the mic and have you talk into the mic so the live stream folks can hear. So raise your hand, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me?
Well,
No.
this is for the live stream.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I mean, this is really inspiring. And I really like the different names that you gave to the different clinical trial, optimistic, next steps, and all the rest. But my question is, we don't have many scientists who are also like entrepreneurs. So my question is, what is really the driving force for you, especially for us who are really the emerging gerontologists and emerging scientists? And then secondly, also, what are the success tips for generating all these different, randomized clinical trials that you've been really pushing? Thank you.
Awesome. There's a lot there. So the entrepreneurship, I mean, I feel like you're asking kind of why, right? What drives it? What motivates it? So, it was absolutely opportunity for impact. I was very grateful to the Hartford Foundation, who funded a dissemination planning grant related to Optimistic, which is money I'd spend differently today. But I spent it we were trying to figure out what are the range of options to try to get Optimistic out there. We had our nice website at the time, we had our tools up there, but how do you get this into clinical practice? And I finally decided decided that I looked at not-for-profit entities, I looked at doing consulting within the university, but I decided to create this for-profit entity to be nimble and flexible in terms of how you could raise money for it. That said, I've now been very much against trying to raise money for it because I want to maintain control of it, because that's the choice that you make. Because people who give you money are buying control. That was something I kind of learned because it seemed fun to me, stand up and pitch my company and bring in dollars. But as I appreciated the implications of that more, I've taken a different tack with it. It's not for everybody, for sure. I have a lot of colleagues in academia who have had some experiences with founding businesses or partnering on businesses and then gotten the heck away from it, really weren't interested. I do think, though, that there are some people who steer away from it due to a lot of fear and concern, which I understand, around conflict of interest. And I think while that's something that needs to be managed very directly and fairly aggressively out front, I think it can be managed if it is, if you truly feel that this venture, this effort is going to allow you to do things you want to do. And so that's been my experience. And we executed a contract so quickly with state government during COVID in a way that I don't think a university could. And so it's been flexible, it's been nimble, it's been stressful, and it's really pushed me. And it has also my experience in working in this startup we founded it in 2018. So over these last years, it has also helped me think about implications for dissemination of your work from day one, the way I wish I'd done with Optimistic. I thought CMMI had it covered. But now, from day one of the Uplift clinical trial, I'm thinking about what are our other deliverables. Yeah, of course, we're going to write up all our results. We got our outcomes laid out here. We'll do all these analyses we said we do, but what else are we going to develop? And not only that, we're going to develop these trainings, but how are we going to get them out there? Who are the partners who disseminate trainings to nursing home staff? I'd like to get to know them, and I have, right? And so I think it's made me much more intentional about thinking about that up front. It's really informed how I think about and approach research. But I think it also can be a distractor, because is there a grant I haven't written because of Probari? Probably, right? Because it does take significant investment of time. And so it's a very, I think, personal decision about your time and your skill sets and what makes sense for you when. But it's just, I've appreciated being stretched on that. You asked other things too. What else did you ask? Clinical trials, that was a big one. I've mentioned, I think, I'm actually hoping, especially for the nursing home setting, that figure can kind of be a guide in terms of, here's the problem I want to solve. Is a clinical trial the way to approach that? Here's an intervention I'm thinking, is a clinical, does it make sense in the nursing home setting? And I hope it can help people walk through it. So if someone is interested in doing a clinical trial in the nursing home, that's what this network is going to be about and be designed to support. Because you can't design, I don't think you can effectively design a clinical trial, by yourself. There's a lot of iteration just on that specific aims page for some months. And you're going to need to talk to, nursing home executive directors. Does this align with your priorities? The way I'm thinking about this intervention, is this something that could work? Do you think staff would agree to answer these surveys? Do you think family members would agree? You've got to do all that up front. Plus, you want letters of support from those guys attesting to all that. But you want to ask not just for grantsmanship in your letters of support, because you need to know. You need to know that this is feasible, because once it gets funded, you have to do it. But that's this Next Steps network. There are a ton of people involved in the network who have a lot of experience doing different kinds of trials in this setting. And we're going to all be here to help and support, and we're going to have mechanisms, and we're going to have pilot funding. But we're also going to have these research studios where people can bring ideas, workshop them, and get detailed feedback on them. So how you conduct high quality clinical trials, you got to find a lot of partnerships, get feedback, and this U24 is the exact type of thing where you can get structured feedback on ideas.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll do a question online, and of course it'll be about staffing.
Yeah.
Right. We can't have a
No,
conversation.
you can't get away from it. That's
Can't
okay.
have this conversation because how can you implement something if your staff changes over every 3 months, and where do you go? So this question came from online. It's from Bob Vogel. With the current staff shortages system-wise, it seems like we're in a hopeless situation for either assisted living or skilled nursing and or home care options. As you see the current situation, how realistic is it that this will change for the current aging population?
So, I mean, I just have to believe that this is unacceptable, that we will not accept it. I think that, you know, the whole minimum, I'm sure there are people in this room who could teach me a lot about the minimum staffing standards and regulatory policy and, trying to, understand more about that. So I think there is a lot of focus on this issue right now. And actually, I would point you to the Moving Forward Coalition. So there was an Institute of Medicine or NASM report on nursing home quality. Actually, I did have that. Oh, I still have my slides up. There you go. There it is. I thought it might come up. I think of that. Okay. So the National Imperative to Improve Nursing Home Quality, there is, they have a number of specific goals, and many of them around staffing. The Moving Forward Coalition is an organization that's been formed to put action plans around these goals. Again, many around staffing. I think the main thing I'd say is we can't give up. We have to keep trying. We're not going to get it. There's no robot, there's no monitoring tech that is going to replace the need for personal hands-on care. There are absolutely technologies that can increase safety in nursing homes, and we need to be investigating and looking into those, but not as a replacement. When we think about, and I think a great example that I know is familiar to people who know this space is the use of antipsychotic medications and other pharmacologic treatments for behaviors related to dementias. The answer to that, the way to manage, the evidence-based strategies to manage behaviors related to dementia requires personalized hands-on care. We can't get away from that. But I do think we need to think about how to support family members in being partners in that team and supporting, and then we're going to need to pay people more money, offer more training, offer career ladders. Like there's just going to need to be continued creative solutions focused on building up and bolstering this space. There's no escape from it, but I don't feel hopeless about it. And I loved it. I think there was you talked about earlier today, you were out talking to high school students about some of your programs, and I think that's key. I think sometimes people don't think about careers in aging because they just haven't been exposed to them. They don't know, the range of options. So I think getting in front of younger people in positive ways is so very cool, and I think can help start to open people's minds to thinking about it. And certainly maybe entering in as staff in facilities is a great way to enter into the healthcare field and get a sense of if it's a fit for you, if you have a heart for it. I will say one of the biggest things we need to do is retain people who are already in these jobs. If someone has a heart for this kind of work, we just need to wrap support around them. I remember collecting data in a nursing home for the first wave of this of our trial. Still lots of PPE and COVID restrictions, and I'm having this conversation with this 20-year-old nursing assistant, and a woman with dementia came over and started, touching things on the table, and she just stood up, she took her hands, she got her engaged in something else. She was a natural. And then a few minutes later, a nursing supervisor came and yelled at her because she'd moved her visor up on her head because she was sweating, and because we were so, we had to be so focused on all those regulations to the letter. But it was such a negative interaction. And it just broke my heart because this woman, I'm concerned that she works in food service now or she's moved to another field. So that I think is a key. Not only do we need to find more people and inspire people to go into this field, if they are in there, if they have a heart for it, anything we can do to lift them up and support them, we need to be doing.
Thank you. That's great. So I think that's a great place for us to end right now. We encourage you to stay, though, ask Kathleen some more questions. We want to thank everybody who joined us on our live stream. We'd love to hear some feedback from you. Please reach out and let us know. And again, let's give a great warm welcome and thank you to Dr. Kathleen and the
Thank you. Thank you.